In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And welcome everyone to this episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Edwards. Joining us today is the CEO of The Lonely Whale, Ms. Dune Ives. Dune, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell our audience a little bit about The Lonely Whale. What whale specifically is lonely in this case?
There actually is a real lonely whale. You clearly haven't seen the documentary film by the award-winning producers and directors, but Lonely Whale was founded in 2015 by producing partners Lucy Sumner and Adrian Grenier, who most people will recognize from his role at Vinny Chase on Entourage. And the organization was founded out of inspiration by this real whale. His name is 52 Hertz. That's the frequency that he calls out at. And it's a real whale that has been swimming up and down the Pacific coast, calling out for companionship, but never once hearing a call back. Hence, he is called the loneliest whale in the world.
Oh, so there is a lonely whale. There's a story behind it. Yes, I'm a surfer, so I do have a big appreciation for whales, for dolphins, for sea life. And there was a frequent, or I guess a relatively new oil spill that happened up here in Huntington Beach. I don't know if you're aware of it or not.
Very aware.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Detrimental for people in the coastal community and the animals that we surf with. What is Lonely Whale's role in kind of this new environmental commitment, as well as partnerships, as well as how can we work together from a business perspective to take on all of these great challenges?
You know, when we started Lonely Whale, we had people from all over the world who were reaching out after hearing the story about this whale, asking, what can I do? How can I get involved? Is there something I can do to make sure that his life, our ocean, the ocean, is a healthy place, not only for this whale, but for all of us? And I think the thread that tied everybody together is the sense that we are all connected. Everyone at some point has felt lonely in their life. They felt misunderstood, they felt disconnected. And so there is this, there's a common theme that we can all really connect to with this character from the ocean. I think humans are naturally inclined to have empathy for creatures from the ocean especially. And so Lonely Whale was started to bring people closer together, first and foremost. Can we start to have conversations differently so that we can, as The Rock will say, as Dwayne Johnson will say, you can truly see somebody. You can see someone, you can hear someone, you're having a conversation rather than talking to somebody. And I think NGOs historically are really good at talking at people. They talk at politicians, they talk at businesses, they talk at individuals. Businesses sometimes call them consumers, we call them humans. But at Lonely Whale, what we wanted to do is we wanted to listen. And we wanted to really understand what were the system drivers behind the declination of ocean health that continues at a rapid pace. And then how can we as an organization speak to individuals through companies, through policy, through our own work, our campaign work, in a way that really helps people engage in the issue and really pay attention, not only to the issues and the animals, but really to each other and what we need.
We're big proponents of collaboration at Real Leaders. We have our own collaborative network. What makes a nice collaboration deal, negotiation, agreement for you? What are you looking for? Are you interested in disruption? What makes an attractive collaboration for you?
When we look at an issue, so let's take our current issue, thin film plastic bags. When we look at an issue, we're looking for brands, NGO partners, individuals who are willing to take measured risk, not super risky, but measured risk, and willing to allow themselves to think differently for a little while. So not leading with the exact same strategies as they've had in the past, maybe with different partners, maybe on a different time scale, but they're willing to be bold, open up their networks, and try something new. That's the most important thing. And I think also is just coming forward with their most authentic self. So being able to own and be vulnerable, I think that's a huge part of collaboration that we get off track with collaboration is when we lead with our egos instead of really being vulnerable in what we don't know, what we don't understand, and who we need to talk to be able to uncover the answers to the questions that we have.
It's inspiring to hear, and part of the people at this conference is you hear from the large organizations who are truly understanding the business case for incorporating regenerative products, incorporating purpose-driven leadership that manifests throughout the management chains and leadership as well, into the employees, into the supply chains, into the customers. What's the business case to you for regenerative products, for regenerative thinking into a large corporations that you work with?
Well, it really depends on what kind of time horizon you're talking about, right? I think for us,
Sure.
for me as a human, as a mom, I tend to think about a shorter time horizon for change than I think some companies do and some leaders do. And that's because I don't think we have as much time as we think we do, if what we want is to keep things as they are. So it's both your time horizon, but also what is your objective? If you want to keep things as they are, we better work a lot faster than we are, right? All of the conversation we're having is great. It's fantastic. The earth and its systems are operating on a very different time horizon than we think they are. The models can't predict exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and where. But one of the speakers that we heard from at Sustainable Brands in San Diego was a wonderful woman from Redfin, who has incorporated into, when you're looking for a house, your search, are you in a floodplain? Are you in a floodplain for next year, for the next 5 years, or for 30 years out? And how does that start to influence your decision making about where you purchase a home from? So regenerative products, design, systems thinking, circularity, sustainability, net zero, whatever the words are that we're using, we have to really think about a shorter time frame for change, or accept that what we have right now is going to be really different than what we're going to have 10 years from now. So I love the conversation. I think it is imperative that we have it. I love the measurement that I'm seeing from the brands. I also think, though, that we need to really start to own whether or not we all have the same end objective. What are we all working towards? It's not enough anymore to say we're working towards a livable planet. What does that even really mean? And for whom? And I think once we define that, then we can determine whether or not what we're doing right now is enough.
What is the end goal for you? Is it net positive? Is it a company that sustains itself, that's thriving? What is that to you in your mind?
I'm a mom of a 30-year-old and a 7-year-old. So it's very simple for me. The end game for me is that my child, my 7-year-old, sees butterflies. That's what I want. I want him to have that wonder of nature deep inside of his heart and soul and his mind. It's pretty simple, and yet it's going to be really hard to ensure that. I want him to be able to see coral reefs that are thriving. I want him to see fish. I want him to wonder at just how amazing nature is in its abundance and diversity of species. I don't want him to see homeless people on the street. You know, I want him to see a world where we are all caring for each other. And I do think it's possible that we can get there. I think we have to really rethink how we're getting there, though.
Financing and investment is going to be a big catalyst for a lot of these movements. What have been some of your conversations with investors? What are they looking for specifically? What do you need to educate them about?
Every investor group has a different risk tolerance. So the investors that we tend to work with most closely are those that have a slightly higher tolerance for risk, as well as a shorter time horizon within which they want the change to occur. What they need to see is that the products that are coming forward to address the gaps that our campaigns are exploiting in a very positive, solutions-focused way, but are creating space for those solutions to come forward. They're looking to see, does the management team have what it takes? You know, there's lots of really smart people who can innovate around technology and materials, who can innovate around design and process, but is the management team solid? And how do we know that? And who do we know that from? What kind of certainty do we have that they're going to have what it takes to really withstand the changes that are going to come from the marketplace? So that's a big driver of our conversation, really wanting to make sure that the management teams behind these companies that have the innovations we need to address the market gaps and the systems drivers are really ready for the long haul, and they're going to be there to scale with the company.
So from the CEO's perspective, at Lonely Whale, what's worked for you in terms of management, in terms of articulating a vision, having people engaged in the workforce? What's worked for Lonely Whale?
At Lonely Whale, we're really big believers in being curious, first and foremost. As soon as we lose our curiosity, we're not going to be as successful as we have been. So we never stop too long to think that what we did was great, or to pat ourselves on the back for too much time. We're always looking at, but did we do enough? Did that campaign actually change behavior norms? Or was it just a feel-good campaign? Was it just about awareness, but there wasn't any impact at the end? And so we're very data-driven. Everyone at the company is. We're really being mindful of what is our impact and is it enough? And how long should we be around for? Should NGOs exist in perpetuity? I don't think so. I think if we're around for 25 years, we haven't done our job. It means we haven't worked hard enough to really push ourselves to solve the issues that are in front of us. So our management approach is everyone has a voice. Everybody needs to lead with data. Be curious. Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Right? It's not about whether or not the CEO thinks it's a good idea. It's whether or not you brought the idea forward and you're asking for help and you're really seeking out others to support you in your work.
When you attend conferences like these, or you have meetings, you go see somebody, what's one thing you want to make sure you walk away with when you attend an event like this?
I want to understand the trends. I want to know, is this conversation different than it was 2 years ago? Who stood up on stage and said, we screwed up, we got it wrong, but actually we didn't because we learned from those mistakes? You often don't hear a lot of mistakes at conferences like this. You hear a lot of like, look at how amazing it is, it's so glorious. But where are those leaders who are saying, look, you know what, we're trying, it's really hard. It's really hard, and here we slid backwards this way. And we realized that we actually need to do a whole lot more than we are doing.
What's your thoughts on mistakes, challenges? I mean, every single CEO that we speak to, any entrepreneur, they've got the lashes on their back, they've got scars, What are some of the scars that you've been able to learn from, especially in 2020, which was such a hectic year for everybody?
That collaboration is really hard. It's really hard. It's easy to say, and it's really hard to get right. Even if you think you're a really good collaborator, you probably aren't. Have you let your ego go? Did you have clarity and expectations right from the very beginning? Were your motivations aligned? That's been my biggest learning. It's really hard. And we've had some big bruises over the last couple of years. And I think primarily because of me and my leadership style, which is to trust. I'm a big believer in trust. And that has led us to a place where collaboration didn't actually work out the way that we had hoped it would. So that's been a big learning. And it's caused me to really think about, well, how do we get clarity and expectations right from the very beginning? How do we protect our IP rather than thinking altruistically all the time? I tend to say that I live in utopia. I love living in utopia. It's beautiful there. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. There's like glitter unicorns. They fly all over the place, right? You've got pink lemonade coming out of fountains.
Non-lonely whales.
There are no lonely whales in utopia, and I love utopia. And yet there is the harsh reality of business and competition, even in the NGO space. And so protecting your IP is critical, just like it is in any business, and making sure that you have clarity and expectations right from the start.
Any conference you go to, whether it's Sustainable Brands or another one, you're going to find values-aligned people that have or share many similar perspectives on how business should operate. For the common entrepreneur or business owner in the world, they're trying to make a means to an end. What are some things for those people listening out there that are maybe a little bit aware about sustainability, regeneration? What advice, or if anything, would you share with them to bring them into this conversation or to learn from them as well?
Well, I would say that's even true. That's a good question for the folks who attend conferences like this, because you said it perfectly. I meet a lot of values-aligned people. I don't necessarily meet a lot of values-aligned companies. And I think that's that was a learning for me in corporate America, is that companies exist for the sake of its shareholders. Well, how do you define shareholder? Who is the shareholder today? Is it just the investors, the ones who hold stock? Or is society at large and communities, are they the shareholders? And how are we operating on their behalf? So in a corporate structure, if you're at a small business or you're in a very large company, you face the same conflict internally, which is how do you get alignment internally around the innovation that you want to put forward? And if you are thinking from your own perspective, your own goals, or your own objectives as an individual, whether you're a very small company, 2 or 3 people, or something really large, 100,000 people, you're not going to be successful. If you think with that end customer in mind, what are the problems that you're trying to solve for on their behalf, which ultimately will benefit the company? And then if you're also thinking about society as a shareholder and where those two match up, then you'll be successful.
I can't agree more. I think what you're describing is also like stakeholder value. How do you increase the value of stakeholders while also generating profits? If you're able to generate more profits, solves more problems, right? It's the beauty of kind of system we're in. It seems like leadership is a big part of this, though. Collaboration is difficult. You've talked a lot about setting the tone early and sustaining that message throughout your timeline that you set. So Dune, let's bring this home. What is your definition of a real leader?
A real leader is somebody who is vulnerable. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to reach across the table and ask for help. They're willing to say, you know what, we didn't get it right, but here's what we learned. And I think when you're vulnerable, I think you are leading with your heart, and you are naturally a kind and generous human. And I think those things win out every single time.
Love it. It's been definitely a theme throughout this conversation today, if you will. Dune, appreciate you coming on the Real Leaders Podcast today. Where can people find more information about the Lonely Well?
Oh, go to lonelywell.org. You can find everything you want there, including links out to all of our programs and our campaigns, and our agency, 52hertz.agency, is a new agency that we just launched.
For Dune Ives, I'm Kevin Owers, asking you to go out there, be vulnerable, and always, folks, keep it real. Thanks, dude.
Thank you.